Let's go to our political panel of the day. Tim Wilson and Julian Hill have joined me now down in the Melbourne studio. Gents, thanks both for your time today. Let's start on what's been a very big week on climate policy. All this talk of underwriting coal power in the past few months, Tim Wilson, but the government is picking, it looks like, instead a hydro project, albeit not one ready for a few years. Are you pleased with this direction?
Well, I'm pleased with the comprehensive approach that the government's taking, the whole of economy approach is taking towards reducing emissions while delivering reliable and affordable power for Australians, because we've got the Climate Solutions Fund, we've got the Productivity Plan, which is focused on reducing energy consumption by industry to make it more internationally competitive. We have investments in new energy, we have encouragement of new innovation. So it's kind of across the board, and Snowy 2.0 is a critical part of that, about delivering baseload power, but also affordable power from renewable sources.
Does it seem, though, like the party is taking more this direction, that it doesn't look as though we're about to get a coal-fired power station underwritten before the election, and do you welcome that?
Well, no, the position of the government has always been to be technology neutral and focus on what we need to do to underwrite the reliable and affordable power that the country needs. Now, that's from a mixed source. We have to lead the transition, and we are doing that. But as part of that also is making sure you look at a way of sharing the risk in energy. One of the strengths of the Snowy 2.0 project has always been that it's been able to deliver storage and reliable power, that sort of critical baseload power, while also being renewable and affordable at the same time.
Julian, as for the plan and what Labor thinks of it, of course, you've got an energy plan that focuses on subsidising batteries. This is subsidising a big battery.
Oh, well, the first thing to acknowledge there is we actually have an energy plan. I mean, the Australian public are way ahead of the Parliament, and indeed both parties, I think, over the last decade. Our failure at a national level to get a reliable, steady energy policy that industry can invest in over 10 to 20 years is a disgrace. We've made clear consistently through the term of this government our willingness to compromise. But if the Liberals were serious about climate change, Malcolm Turnbull would still be the Prime Minister. We'd have the National Energy Guarantee. I mean, it's a desperate ploy at this point to grab a couple of projects and pretend somehow that is a substitute for a proper national energy policy. I think we're on to fingers and toes now if we were trying to count just how many energy policies the government's had.
But would this suit Labor pretty well with all the renewables you want to put into the mix? You've got this, as I said, subsidy for household batteries. We don't know if they'll be taken up. This firms up the renewables.
Yeah, so I think there was a great way of explaining it yesterday, and of course energy policy is an extraordinarily complex area, but in simple terms, the advantage of pumped hydro as part of an energy system is when the wind's blowing, the sun's shining, you can use those renewables to pump the water up the hill, and then at times when renewables aren't providing that power, you run the water down the hill. So it smooths out the peaks and troughs, if you like. So in that regard, it's a welcome commitment. But I think Bill said it very aptly yesterday in trying to explain it to the public. It's like having the battery without the plug. So unless you're serious about investing in fostering renewables, it doesn't make a lot of sense. And the government at every turn has attacked consistently renewable energy.
All right, we might give that half a thumbs up from you on that particular policy then. Let's turn to Border Force, because...
Well, it's qualified because they don't actually want to endorse the plan. I mean, the lines that Bill Shorten's running, frankly, are farcical. It's a plan that works consistently with the states as well, state measures. And one of the strengths of the Snowy Hydro project back to the 50s has been that it's located basically halfway between Melbourne and Sydney, which is obviously a critical part of the national energy mix and the energy demand. So it's why the proposal was put on the table first. It's one of the ones that the Snowy Hydro authorities looked at themselves, and of course it's critical to why it's getting the back of the government because of the importance it has for particularly our two most popular cities.
You still don't have an energy policy.
I mean, apart from investing in energy.
We are going to move on. It was a bit sneaky of Tim Wilson to jump in there. He could tell I was moving on, but well done. Let's turn on to Border Force. This is a story that first appeared in November, that Border Force were limiting patrols on the sea to save money. Not true, said Peter Dutton. He appeared to be backed up by the Commissioner. Now Michael Out from the Commissioner says from December 3 to 11, there was a, quote, more risk-based approach, limiting physical patrols and relying more on radar. The day this stopped, December 11, the day the article was published. Just a coincidence, Tim Wilson?
Well, I don't know the details, but I would have thought that if you can use technology to do things cheaper and more efficiently, I'm kind of in favour of that. If we find a pathway
well, he did this for 8 days, though.
So, well, as I said, I don't know the details and the operational details, and nor do we. We're just relying on media reports. But if we can make sure that we secure our borders, stop boats, but also make sure that we're able to do it cost effectively and efficiently, I think, frankly, that's something, government should look at doing. And yes, sea patrols are a critical part of that story, but relying on radar, it's not a new technology. It's used quite a lot by the Navy in other areas. So I sort of think this is probably one of these storm in a teacup stories.
Julian Hill, you've been pretty critical of Home Affairs broadly, but Labor seems likely to keep the department, this major restructure.
Home Affairs, how long have we got? Look, on that specific story today, the facts are pretty clear, and the media reports reference advice from the Border Force Commissioner through Senate estimates. Peter Dutton said that there were no patrols cut. That's turned out to be false because of budget cuts and so on. Whatever words you want to put around it, that's the core fact. I actually have been up and done Operation Resolute as part of the Defence Force parliamentary program last year. So I've been for a day on the Dash 8 patrols that patrol up off Darwin. I've been on the Cape-class boats, and I've seen the training that Border Force, along with the Defence Forces, do. The regularity of these patrols is a critical part of the deterrence, and I think what Tim says is correct in one sense, that over time, if we can move to other technologies, more radar-based systems, aerial drones and unmanned flights, that's a great thing. However, that technology is not in place yet. The regularity of these patrols and the discipline is an critical part of the surveillance and deterrent. It's not just about boat people, it's about illegal fishing, gun running, drug smuggling, all sorts of other crimes that need to be picked up.
I'll call that another tentative thumbs up, I think. You can disagree with me if you like. So we're getting to a little bit of agreement here. Let's touch finally on an area I'm sure we won't get agreement on. Frank dividends and this program you're taking around the country. Tim Wilson, you had another hearing yesterday in Adelaide. Can you sketch out for me, in sort of simple terms, the financial situation of someone you say will be hit by this change by Labor that really can't afford it?
Well, there's plenty of people. If you go to the hearings that were in South Queensland, only South Brisbane a couple of weeks ago.
You haven't said retiree tax. Come on.
Well, I'm actually answering the question, which is we had hearings in South Brisbane only a few weeks ago. A woman who is earning less than the tax-free threshold of income in retirement, so she's earning less than $18,200 a year, is going to lose $6,000 of overpaid tax that Bill Shorten wants to take away from her. So, I mean, that's not even pushing people below the poverty line. It's people below the poverty line and pushing them further below. But there are lots of other people who are going to be directly impacted, and we're hearing them.
Can I ask about that one then?
Sure.
Tim Wilson, because the age pension itself sounds like it'd be higher than that particular example. And if you take a couple, they can have their own home and $848,000 in other assets. So will you see in a lot of these situations people surely just changing their affairs?
Well, that's one of the big concerns, is that people will deliberately divest, put money in their own home, or find a way to get onto the pension because of the incentive structures that's being put forward by Labor's policy that actually discourages people from saving, investing and taking responsibility. And the thing that, I mean, people can talk dollars and cents, and that's a part of it. But the clearest message you get out of going to these hearings and hearing directly from the people who are going to be impacted is how distraught they are about the loss of dignity that comes from encouraging them to go on the pension. They've tried to do the right thing their whole lives, to sacrifice and save to be independent, and they just feel like the rug is being pulled out underneath them. This morning I was at Bentley train station. I had a bloke who came up and explicitly told me about the consequence. People talk about how they're not able to sleep, how they think it's having anxiety and effect on their health because of the consequences of this policy.
OK, we are nearly out of time. Julian Hill, your response to that?
Oh, look, the inquiry has been proven to be a complete circus. It's a misuse of the Parliament's committee system. That committee should be focused on scrutinising the government's legislation and how to improve it, rather than the unprecedented use of parliamentary entitlements and taxpayers' money to dissect an opposition policy. The scandals surrounding it to have political party recruitment, fundraising, conflicts of interest galore is a disgrace, and I think it demeans the Parliament's committee system, which should be used for better purposes.
That's a point that's been made, and there was some criticism as well by the Speaker of that. We are nearly out of time, but can I just ask you again, Julian Hill, to do with those voters in particular that say they don't want to have to go back on the part pension, which there will be a big incentive now for some of these people that are near that line?
Sure, and look, we've said consistently that taken into account in the costings is that over time some people may change their drawdown and we'll see a few people fall into that part pension. That is a well-targeted, means-tested safety net, and that's entirely appropriate. The fact is, this change simply restores the original dividend imputation system that stops double taxation, and we stop paying over $5 billion of cash to people who pay no tax. It's not sustainable as a tax loophole.
So that's just a lie. The tax is paid, and it's overpaid tax they're getting back.
The tax is paid by the company, and let's be very clear on that.
A lie.
What this loophole means is that individuals who pay no tax get company tax refunded to them. Now, over time, that's rising to $8 billion
If I can just jump in. If I can just jump in, sorry, gentlemen. Tim Wilson, the aspect of this system that does mean there's no company tax paid is accurate, right? So if a company is paying that tax, the person gets the full refund. The money the company earned is not taxed. That is the result of this.
Well, this is the system that Paul Keating designed, and it was based off previous inquiries, which is that the tax is going to be held against the individual based on their income tax rate. So that's how you see the shift. People having their overpaid tax stolen from them under this policy, and that's why people are angry.
It's not the system Paul Keating designed. Paul Keating's system was to avoid double taxation, which is what we're doing.
And that's exactly what this current system stops. It stops overpaid taxation and double taxation.
Is that an increasing proportion of company tax profits will not be taxed. It's an erosion of the company tax base.
If you understand the dividend imputation system, that's false.
We are right out of time. We'll pick up on this, I'm sure, another time, because I feel as though maybe we'll have a whole segment on it next time, because I suspect both of you could go for a while. Tim Wilson, Julian Hill, thanks for your time.
Thank you.